Today, the ACC Conference announced that they will be having a 2020 season and that they're planning on going forward with the 2020 college football season. And they also announced that Notre Dame will be joining the conference for at least the 2020 season. So this is a pretty interesting situation out of the ACC, and that's what we're going over here today. We're also going to be going over everything that you need to know about the ACC and their football plans for the 2020 season, along with the schedule as well. The schedule has been released. We don't know the dates as far as when teams will be playing, but we do know what teams each team in the ACC will be playing for next season. So we're going to be going over that today. And we're also going to be going over my thoughts on this and what you can expect from the teams in the ACC next season. So once again, Notre Dame has joined the ACC. That's kind of the headliner of this news here from the ACC. And it looks like they will be a temporary member of the conference, at least for the 2020 season. So obviously, this is some pretty big news, especially for Notre Dame, which has been an independent for quite a while. And obviously, I mean, this was kind of bound to happen for them, considering, one, they're a very good team, and two, most of their games on their schedule have pretty much been canceled off for the entire season. Obviously, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have already canceled their non-conference games, and that's kind of what the ACC has done here. They've pretty much canceled off the rest of their non-conference games except for one game. And obviously, the conference will be having an 11-game schedule next season, and that includes one non-conference game. So each team will be allowed to have one non-conference game. However, the non-conference game will have to be in-state, meaning basically for Florida State as well. That rivalry will be able to go on for the 2020 season. We will be able to see Florida and Florida State play each other because those two teams are in the same state as each other. So basically, yeah, Georgia and Georgia Tech will likely be able to go on as well if those teams do agree to that. But yeah, basically, I mean, long story short, for the ACC, the schedule is going to be completely revamped, which is kind of a crazy thing. Of course, the Big Ten has not really announced, or the Pac-12 haven't announced that they will be revamping their schedule. I mean, I'd assume that's going to happen at some point because, especially in the Big Ten, we do see a couple of games where Big Ten conference opponents will be playing each other in Week 1, which I'm sure at this point, Week 1 is pretty much going to be crossed off of most conferences' college football schedules. It doesn't look like we'll be seeing any games in Week 1 for college football, but yeah, the season for the ACC will be starting the week of September 7th, which was the originally scheduled Week 2. And so we will be seeing games on Week 2 this season. However, there will be no divisions this season for the ACC. That's also another big headline of this news here. All 15 teams in the ACC conference will be competing without divisions. So basically, Notre Dame will be in the same conference, and they'll be playing against pretty much 10 assorted teams throughout the ACC. And honestly, I mean, yeah, it's some pretty crazy news for sure. But yeah, there will also be 2 bye weeks for every team next season. So the ACC will be planning on a 13-week regular season. And it's still very uncertain as to how those bye weeks are going to work. Like, it's still under question as to whether or not, for example, if Notre Dame has a big coronavirus outbreak on their team, it's still pretty uncertain as to whether or not the bye weeks are going to be scheduled into the team's regular season schedules. We really don't know much about that yet, or whether or not the bye weeks will be based off of or used for pretty much only postponed games. We don't really know anything about that yet, so stay tuned for news about that. But yeah, as far as we know, there's going to be 2 available bye weeks for every team, and I'm sure those will be utilized in the case that there will be, or if there is, an outbreak of COVID for any of the teams in the ACC for next season. The championship game does look like it will be on either December 12th or the 19th for the ACC next season as well, and it will be taking place in North Carolina as usual. And I mean, obviously, yeah, this is some pretty crazy news, especially for Notre Dame. I mean, considering Notre Dame has been an independent for such a long time, I mean, for them to be able to be in the ACC, it's going to be a pretty interesting situation. And I think this is going to be a big change up for the ACC in general as we look at the ACC schedule for the 2020 season. And of course, we don't know the specific dates quite yet as to when each team will be playing each other, but we do know which teams will be playing each team. So basically, we do know your home games and away games. However, we do not know the specific dates quite yet. So I'm assuming that those will probably be announced sometime in the near future. I'd assume within the next couple of weeks. But still, yeah, there's just a lot of uncertainty here as to how everything's going to work. But I mean, in the end, yeah, everything is still very uncertain. And of course, if you look at Notre Dame, they were already scheduled to play Clemson next season, so nothing changes there. but they also played Duke. Duke was already scheduled. Florida State, I believe Florida State is a new game that Notre Dame will be playing this season. Same thing with Syracuse. We don't see Syracuse on 2020 or Notre Dame's original 2020 schedule. Same thing with Virginia Tech. That's going to be a brand new game for this team as well. Boston College also wasn't on Notre Dame's original schedule. And if you look at Georgia Tech, I believe that one was already scheduled. They were supposed to play Georgia Tech on the road in their original schedule. And I mean, if you look at North Carolina, that's going to be a new game as well. And North Carolina, I mean, let me remind you, North Carolina is looking like a very good team going into 2020. So that could be a tough game for Notre Dame, especially having to play them on the road. Let me remind you, I mean, North Carolina, that could be a huge game for North Carolina in that one. Pittsburgh, I believe that game was already scheduled for Notre Dame. Wake Forest was as well. But yeah, in the end, still going to be a very interesting season for Notre Dame. I mean, they already were scheduled to play 5 or 6 ACC teams last season, but yeah, this is still going to be quite a change-up for them. I mean, if you look around the ACC for Clemson, I mean, at Clemson next season, this is going to be an interesting season for them as well, as they've got to play Notre Dame. They also have to play Virginia Tech, Florida State. So I don't really think there's going to be a lot of schedule switch-ups for most of the ACC teams. However, there are definitely some changes for every team somewhere on their schedule for next season. Of course, now you got to play 10 conference games, and so yeah, that will be interesting to see to see how everything turns out there. But once again, the non-conference games have not been announced either for each of these teams. However, I'm assuming Florida State will probably be playing Florida for their non-conference game, and then for Georgia Tech, they'll be probably playing Georgia, I'd assume, considering both of those teams have their rivalry games and they're both in state as well. Same thing with Louisville. I'm assuming that they probably play Kentucky, but still, I mean, that all depends on whether or not the SEC decides to switch anything up with their policies as well. So, I mean, there's still, once again, way too much uncertainty here. It's very tough to predict everything that's going on right now. But this is what we do know of as far as your 2020 ACC schedule right now. Your ACC championship game will be on December 12th or 19th. And yeah, it's going to be basically the top 2 teams once again. And it's going to be based on conference game winning percentage. Basically, yeah, one division is basically a long story short here. We will not be seeing any divisions for the ACC next season. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. This should be a pretty interesting season. It also really relieves me to know that the ACC is planning on having a college football season. Of course, it's been so questionable throughout the past few months as to whether we're going to be seeing a football season. But as far as it looks right now, I think we honestly might. I think it might happen. I mean, the ACC is planning on it, so I mean, I'd assume all the other conferences are too. I mean, we've seen a lot of Division III schools back out of their seasons already. I mean, I think 4 or 5 conferences have already canceled their fall sports seasons or postponed it in some way. And for the FBS conferences, I mean, we've seen a couple of modifications from the Big Ten and the Pac-12, but really that's about it. I mean, of course, the ACC now has a modified schedule, but in the end, I mean, there's just been so much uncertainty, and it's good to know that we will be seeing something or some certainty of something by the ACC here today. And so, yeah, once again, very interesting stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, in the comments below on the ACC. I mean, still, everything is so uncertain, and once we get to know our schedules and everything for the ACC next season, I will let you guys know about that, and we'll probably have a video on that as well. But once again, we don't really know the non-conference games or the non-conference opponents for these teams quite yet, but yeah, I will let you guys know once we're able to find that out. But in the end, do let me know your thoughts in the comments below on everything going on here. It's good to know, though, that we're going to be having some sort of football, or there's at least some certainty there and some optimism at least. I mean, over the past month especially, I mean, this July has been kind of a messy one as far as predicting how everything's going to happen in fall goes. So yeah, it's good to know that we will be probably having something, but I mean, once again, it's just still all up in the air. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. If you enjoyed this, slap a like on it and subscribe as well. Really helps out the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more, and I will see you all later.